You out there guys, this is Dale of Lone Wombat Airsoft, and today we're taking a look at the ASG Scorpion Evo BET Carbine. Now I've owned my Evo for the best part of 4 months. That's allowed me to clock in a lot of gaming hours with it, really get to know how the gun works, and most importantly I've given it a chance to break. Now if you want to skip to a certain part of the video, maybe you want to see what the unboxing's like, maybe you want to see what my first impressions are, I've put links in the description down below so you can skip ahead to the part of the video that's most relevant to you. And with that out of the way, on with the review. The ASG Scorpion Evo is a licensed replica of the real steel CZ Scorpion Evo, a modern update to a classic machine pistol that forges it into the carbine you see in front of you. In real world, the CZ Scorpion Evo fires 9x19mm parabellum rounds, features modern polymers through much of its construction, Picatinny rails, M-locks. This allows it to provide a very modern update to armed forces looking to upgrade for more venerable submachine guns such as the MP5. In the airsoft world, the ASG Scorpion Evo is a very robust, lightweight AEG and comes in a multitude of barrel lengths. You can either get the submachine gun length barrel or two carbines, one with the integrated suppressor as seen here. I picked this gun up from Tag Airsoft at the War and Peace Revival Festival, and for the life of me I can't find a website for these guys. I picked up a business card and everything just so that I could remember who they were and research them later, but I can't find a website for them. So however, ASP UK does have one in stock, so I'll link that in the description down below if you want to check it out for yourself. So what else can you expect to turn up when you order an ASG Scorpion Evo in the box? Not much, I'm afraid. When you crack it open, all you're going to find is the Evo itself and a single mid-capacity magazine that holds 75 rounds. That's it. There's not even a proper manual with this one. Like, they do have technical information printed underneath these cardboard layers if you take them out, but the whole thing comes off as more as like promotional material for me, and I'm like, well, why do I need promotional material when I've already bought the gun? But anywho, some freebies would have been nice, but there's nothing. I mean, you don't even get a cheap speed loader to fill up the mid-capacity magazine that's included with it, so no fun freebies for you with your over £300 worth of gun. So what are your first impressions going to be when you pick up a Scorpion Evo? Well, for me, the first thing I noticed is how lightweight it is for something that is essentially the length of a normal AEG assault rifle. This is mainly due down to the construction. Polymer for the most part, with the exceptions being the front handguard and the front suppressor, which are CNC'd aluminium. This results in an extremely lightweight, flickable little platform, but it still has enough heft to it to still make it feel real. I especially appreciate these little cutouts in the front of the handguard here. It's very securing for your front hand, so you get a good grip on it, even if you don't put a full grip on the gun. Nothing rattles on this either. It's extremely well built and solid. In terms of first impressions for build quality, this could easily give a company like VFC a run for their money. So let's go over some of the features of the gun, starting right at the back with the 3-point adjustable folding stock. So as I say, you press this button here, you can extend it out to any one of 3 positions, and there's a button on this side that allows you to collapse it entirely. Locks into place very securely, it's never going to come loose on its own, and more importantly, you can actually use it like this without interfering with any normal use. You can still access all the controls just fine, which is very impressive. As well, to say that it doesn't have like any sort of rubberized texture on the end, it still sits in your shoulder quite snugly and securely with no slip issues, so very impressed with that little stock. Going forward, you have the pistol grip. Now it looks quite basic, but it is surprisingly comfortable, and you get a decent grip on it thanks to these cutouts that are on all the quarters of it, so very nice little pistol grip there. Moving forward is the fire selector, the ambidextrous one that has 4 positions: safe, semi, 3-round burst and fully automatic. Now, I was quite infatuated with the 3-round burst when I first heard about it and started playing around with it, but I quickly learned during the games that there's a brief delay after firing the 3-round burst, so you can't just 3-3-3-3-3. Because of that, I found it more skirmishable if I was just using the semi-auto, because the trigger has such a fast response rate with it. Like, the semi-auto can more than keep up with the 3-round burst, and it's more responsive for me, so I tend not to use the 3-round burst and stick to semi. I barely ever used the full auto, to be honest. I was so impressed with the trigger response time in the semi. More often than not, that would just do the job for me. So even though it does have a decent rate of fire, that trigger response means the semi-auto is really good with this gun. Moving forward, you have the mag release, which is this lever just here. You can either push it with your firing finger or opposing thumb, because again, it is ambidextrous. That'll inject the mags. Now, the 75-round mag, I've had no trouble with this whatsoever. It feeds extremely well, sits into the gun very securely. Minor issue with the high caps, though, that I tend to rely on a lot more. I don't know why, this seems to be a recurring thing for ASG guns, but the little cap on the bottom just keeps clicking off. The retention mech on it's not really strong, so I don't know why they didn't just screw it in, but I had this exact same problem with my P09 pistol from ASG, so just a very weird recurring theme for ASG guns for me. Up top we have the monolithic Picatinny rail at the top. It comes with 2 removable iron sights. The front sight actually has this really nice fluorescent tube in it, so when daylight hits it, it glows up. So it gets you a really nice sight picture with that. You can adjust the back one for elevation as well, or just remove them entirely and put your own scopes on. So quite nice that they are included. There are no other Picatinny rails on the gun, however all the slots in the front are M-LOK compatible, so you can add additional rails on there using the M-LOK system if you feel like it. Last thing then is the charging handle. You pull this back and up, and that exposes the hop-up chamber just here, which is this little dial. Now it's big enough that you can adjust it by hand. It can be quite fiddly and a bit annoying, especially on a cold day, but you can put a Allen key inside that for really precise adjustments as well. So very nice little hop chamber that. To close it down, you push the charging handle lever down a little bit and press the catch just here, and that will release it and cover back up the gun. So, what's it like to live with? Are there any reliability troubles? For me, I had a fair amount of teething issues with this gun. The first one for me was the battery compartment. If you're using a small 7.4 single stick LiPo, then great, it'll just go in just fine. But anything bigger than that, especially if you're wanting to use an 11.1, which is this compatible with, you're going to have to get real creative with where you put the cells and the wire management. The battery space is just not big enough. To access it, you need to take off the entire front rail, so you unscrew the suppressor, pull the front rail off, but when you're pulling it off, just keep a hand on this charging handle because it's spring loaded. When you pull the front off, that will want to ping off into the distance, so just keep a hand on that. But yeah, as I say, the battery space is this tiny space just under the Picatinny rail there, and it's really not big enough for most batteries, unfortunately. You can get a 7.4 or an 11.4 LiPo in there, you just have to get real creative with the placement of it. And more often than not, what's going to happen is that because you're jamming so much battery and wireage into there, it's going to jam the dust cover open if you open it up. This happens numerous times, like you'll go to adjust the hop up on the fly, and when you go to close it, it'll close about there because it started trapping on the wires. So minor niggle with that. The more worrying niggle, however, was that on the second game day of ever using this, the gun stripped of bevel gear. I've heard from other users and ASP UK themselves who've worked on a fair amount of Evos that this is a common issue with ASG Scorpion Evos, unfortunately. It's something to do with the gearboxes not being shimmed correctly, but a lot of users have reported gearbox troubles as well, similar issues. So needless to say, I wasn't particularly impressed with that. The next issue we had was that we noticed the power had dropped massively. Now, out of the box, this is shooting around about 290 FPS for Europe, but it was dropped to about 240 after a couple of game days for me, and needless to say, that's not usable. With 240 FPS, I was barely getting 30 meters range, so you're being massively outgunned by everything on the field. We went to change it by putting in a big upgrade spring, still shooting about 240 FPS, so this made us wonder why, what's causing this. Turns out the air seal had gone, so we needed to replace the entire air seal chamber as well as the spring, and now it's finally up to a decent FPS, but that is a lot of rework and upgrade parts for a very expensive gun. Most users will not want that. They will just want an expensive gun. You'll want it to work and just be flawless the entire time because you paid so much for it, and I don't blame them, but I can't promise that you'll have that experience with this gun, unfortunately. So when I was last at YTA's The Manor, I managed to get a shooting test in with this gun. Was firing from a stable position, 30 metres away from the target, using 0.25 gram BBs. Minor note though, the test is completely invalid. As mentioned in the previous segment, it has a upgrade spring in it, as well as a new air seal chamber. People who watched my TMG3 video will be having a sense of deja vu here, because I was experiencing a similar issue with this gun as that one, in that the standard FPS was so low, it was practically unusable. In order to get it skirmishing again, I needed to upgrade the FPS. So the standard gun was shooting about 290 out of the box, but by the time I needed to upgrade it, I was only shooting 240, so that's unusable. I needed the new spring in it, and the air seal chamber had gone, that needed doing, so this is going to affect the test results, so there's no point in doing the test. However, I still feel it'd be weird to do a gun review and not show it firing than it would to do a gun review and skip that entirely. So, knowing that it is completely pointless, here is the shooting test. So as can be seen from the footage, a fairly decent spread pattern. You'll have to take my word for it that the gun was shooting a similar sort of spread out of the box, but as mentioned, the test is completely invalid. Same thing with the Chrono test. Because the spring was changed, this is a non-standard spring. What it's shooting now isn't what you're going to get. So you're going to have to take my word for it. When I got it out of the box, it chronoed at 290, and before we had to upgrade the spring, it was shooting about 240 FPS, which even at the full out of the box, 290 is really quite low. You definitely want to put an upgrade spring in this at some point anyway. So where do you want to be on the airsoft field to get the absolute most out of this gun? Well, the Evo is about as close to an all-rounder AEG as you're ever going to get. The ability to run on 11.1s, high-capacity magazines and a decent rate of fire means that the spray and pray ability is absolutely there. But as mentioned, I tended to rely on the semi because it was such a quick response time with that. The gun was never pinpoint accurate. There was always a decent spread pattern, but I could never really pick off targets at range with it. You've got a decent range with the hop unit, but the spread pattern was just a bit too big enough to be precise, so I never found myself staying at the back and just sniping people with it. This is definitely a gun for getting up close and in people's faces. More often than not, I took advantage of the fact that it's so lightweight and manoeuvrable to just sprint off into the distance, get a decent flanking and firing angle on enemy targets from there. Because it's so lightweight and manoeuvrable, I found that it's a great gun for taking risks with. Especially because of how quick the response time is on the trigger. You can just run headlong in, take a risky situation and just react immediately, and the gun will keep up with you because of that quick reaction time on the trigger. It's never going to let you down in like a high risk situation. So this is definitely a gun for the people that want to charge and get stuck into the firefights. So ultimately, would I recommend buying the ASG Scorpion Evo? Now, I'm a bit on the fence with this one, I must admit. I wanted an Evo for ages, and earlier this year they're just completely out of stock everywhere, so I was waiting and waiting and waiting, and when I finally got one, great! Then I started suffering problems with it. The strip bevel gear, the low FPS, the air seal went, the tiny battery space. This is a hard gun to live with. Once you get past the teething issues and you can overlook the battery space, then it is a great gun when it works. It feels amazing to hold. I love the ergonomics of it. It just sits in my shoulder perfectly. I love the feel of the thing. It just, the external build quality is ace. But those teething problems, when people buy a 300+ pound gun, they want reliability. They want to know it just works. And I can't promise that experience with this gun. You will run into trouble. So many people have had gearbox troubles with this one. I can pretty much guarantee you will as well when you buy it. The question is, can you live with that? Now that I've got it up to a decent FPS and I've fixed all the broken stuff, I'm definitely keeping mine because I love it now, but most people don't want to deal with the hassle, especially when you buy such an expensive gun. So a very 50-50 result on this one, I'm afraid. That's a decision you're going to have to make for yourselves. Now, I hope you've enjoyed my video review of the ASG Scorpion Evo Carbine. If you've got any questions you'd like to ask me, feedback you'd like to give, maybe you want to share your own experiences of the gun, leave them in the comments section down below. And until next time, this has been Dale of Lone Wombat Airsoft.